If you are listening to this right now, it is not accidental. You were not meant to hear this earlier. Only now, at this precise moment, does your awareness have the capacity to recognize what is happening around you. This message does not reach everyone. It reaches the ones standing at a quiet intersection, where timing, pressure, and truth converge without announcement. Right now is a rare crossing point, not symbolic, not imagined, a real moment of exposure, activation, and acceleration happening all at once. The full moon has already done its part. It didn't ask for permission. It revealed what could no longer remain hidden, emotionally, internally, relationally. You may have felt it in a sudden clarity you didn't go looking for. A feeling that surfaced without drama. A realization that arrived quietly and stayed. Not everything came crashing down. Some things simply lost their grip. The full moon doesn't create endings. It exposes what is already complete. At the same time, the two halves portal opens, not as a dream state, not as an escape, but as a precise activation point. A narrow, energetic window where awareness matters more than intention. This portal doesn't respond to wishing harder. It responds to alignment, to honesty, to the willingness to stand in truth without rushing to decorate it. And then there's Uranus, shifting direction after a long internal cycle. You may not have words for this yet, but you can feel the momentum changing, like a system coming back online, like something that's been paused beneath the surface is beginning to move again. This isn't chaos arriving. It's acceleration returning. You might feel this as restlessness without anxiety, urgency without panic, a sense that time feels slightly different, compressed, sharper, less forgiving of delay. This is the convergence moment. Exposure from the full moon. Activation from the portal. Acceleration through Uranus shifting forward. Timing matters again. Choice carries weight again. Awareness is no longer optional, it's functional. You didn't miss this moment. You didn't arrive late. You arrived when pretending no longer worked. When clarity could finally hold its ground. When the door could recognize you as someone ready to notice it. Don't rush to act yet. Just stay present with this feeling. Because this moment didn't pass you by. Paused long enough for you to meet it. You feel this before others do. That has always been true about you. This is the chosen sensitivity. The quiet attunement that registers shifts long before they become obvious. While others need disruption to wake them up, you sense the change internally. A subtle pull. A tightening in the chest. A knowing that arrives without explanation and refuses to leave. That's why this message finds you now. You were built for unpredictability, not because you enjoy instability, but because your system learned how to stay aware inside it. You adapted early. You learned how to read pauses, tones, energy in a room. You became fluent in what wasn't being said. Over time, that sensitivity sharpened into something precise. An internal compass that responds to subtle signals most people miss. You may have noticed this pattern throughout your life. Feeling different without knowing why. Outgrowing environments quietly. Sensing when something was about to change before there was proof. That wasn't distance. It was calibration. People like you feel shifts first because you're meant to stabilize them later. You're wired to hold clarity when others react. To recognize patterns while others focus on noise. When systems change suddenly, emotionally, relationally, materially, you don't collapse. You recalibrate. This is also why isolation has followed you in waves. Why being misunderstood became familiar. Why you often felt like you were watching life instead of fully inside it. Sensitivity isn't weakness. It's early detection. Right now, that sensitivity is active again. You may feel heightened awareness. Sounds sharper. Emotions closer to the surface. Intuition interrupting your thoughts. You might feel observant rather than expressive. Alert rather than certain. That's not confusion. That's alignment warming up. This moment isn't loud enough for everyone to hear. It reaches the ones who feel the shift before it announces itself. And that matters, because being first to feel means being first to decide. This is the decision window, not the kind that demands grand gestures or dramatic leaps, but the kind that notices what you do when no one is watching. Right now, small choices echo louder than usual. A word spoken or left unsaid. A boundary held or ignored. A step toward something unfamiliar or a pause that feels safe. Everything is magnified, not because the universe is judging you, but because alignment matters more than effort. The smallest willingness carries disproportionate weight. Even hesitation has consequences you may only recognize later. You might feel a subtle pressure pressing against indecision. Not panic, not fear, just a quiet insistence that now is the moment where micromovements matter. This is your courage, measured not in leaps, but in clarity. It's the willingness to respond honestly, even when the next step is unclear. To notice the pull without forcing it. To trust the direction that feels right, even if it doesn't make sense yet. Choices made here don't just move you forward. They set the tone for everything that arrives after. And yet, the pressure isn't meant to overwhelm you. It's meant to wake you, to sharpen your awareness, to teach you that readiness often shows up quietly, inside small, deliberate acts. You may not see the consequences yet. You may not feel the shift fully, but your internal compass already knows which steps will carry weight, and which ones will dissolve into distraction. This is why hesitation feels heavier than usual, and willingness feels electrifying. Because right now, the future is leaning toward the choices you make in this very silence. This is where the two halves portal stops feeling abstract, where it stops being something people talk about, and starts behaving like a threshold you can't unsee. This portal isn't soft. It doesn't soothe you into comfort or reward indecision. It sharpens, clarifies, confronts. You may feel this as impatience with your own delays, as a sudden intolerance for excuses that once felt reasonable, as a pull toward something unfamiliar that doesn't come with reassurance. That's because the future is arriving early. The 2-2 portal doesn't open into fantasy. It opens into truth, into the version of your life that has been forming quietly while you were still negotiating with the past. It removes the buffer. What you've been considering becomes something you're either aligned with or not. This can feel uncomfortable. Not dramatic, just undeniable. You may notice that procrastination feels heavier than action now. That waiting costs more energy than moving. That staying where you are requires more effort than stepping into something new, even if that new thing doesn't yet have a name. This is why familiar paths suddenly feel narrow. Why old roles feel tight around the edges. Why the idea of continuing as you were creates more resistance than curiosity. The portal isn't asking you to be fearless. It's asking you to be decisive. Clarity doesn't always arrive as certainty. Sometimes it arrives as the inability to pretend you don't know. You may have felt this when a thought repeated itself no matter how often you tried to dismiss it, or when an option you once ignored suddenly felt charged, or when something inside you whispered, "Not later, now." This is a threshold moment. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And the door doesn't chase you, simply waits, long enough for you to recognize that the hesitation you're feeling isn't confusion. It's the edge of change. This is the end of pretending. The quiet realization that what once fit no longer does. The full moon has illuminated it. Uranus moving direct has made it unavoidable. You can no longer ignore the subtle tension, the misalignment that lingered in the background, the part of your life that simply doesn't resonate anymore. You may notice it in the spaces you used to fill with obligation, in conversations that now feel hollow, in routines that suddenly feel like weight. It's not a crisis. It's clarity. You don't need to force change or create drama. The shift is already happening beneath the surface. Old attachments dissolve quietly when they're no longer in alignment, like snow melting into a stream that already knows its path. You may feel an internal detachment, not coldness but distance, a gentle recognition that something essential has ended, that your energy no longer belongs in certain places with certain people in certain ways. And with this recognition comes freedom, subtle, almost imperceptible, but profound. You can feel it in the way your chest softens, in the way your thoughts stop circling the past, in the way space begins to open around you. You may not yet know what fills that space. You may not have a map for what comes next. But you know deeply that pretending is over. And sometimes the most important part of awakening is simply noticing that the world you once knew, is quietly shifting away from you. What you may not realize yet is how much has already changed inside you. During Uranus retrograde, while the outer world felt stalled or unresponsive, something quieter was happening beneath the surface. Not visible, not dramatic, but precise. Your values were being rewritten without announcement. Your tolerances adjusted. Your standards recalibrated. You may have wondered why motivation disappeared for things you used to chase. Why certain goals lost their charge. Why you couldn't force yourself to care in the same way anymore. That wasn't laziness. It was an internal upgrade. Uranus retrograde doesn't move life forward. It rewires the compass. It pulls attention inward and asks uncomfortable questions you can't rush past. What matters now? What no longer does? What are you unwilling to trade your energy for anymore? While others were pushing outward, you were being reoriented inward. This is why external progress felt slow. Why plans stalled. Why momentum seemed to evaporate just when you thought you were ready. Your system was resetting priorities. Old desires quietly expired. Outdated standards collapsed on their own. You may notice now that your yes feels heavier, and your no comes faster. That you're less willing to compromise clarity for comfort. Less tolerant of misalignment, even when it's familiar. This is preparation, not loss. Because when Uranus moves direct, it doesn't bring back the old motivations. It activates new ones. Motivations that feel cleaner, quieter, non-negotiable. You're not meant to rebuild your old life with new energy. You're meant to respond to life from a different internal position altogether. And that difference, that subtle but permanent shift, is what makes what comes next impossible to fake. This is where focus becomes power. The portal doesn't just open opportunities, it amplifies everything you bring into it. Thoughts, intentions, attention, even small choices, they all carry extra weight right now. What you give energy to expands. What you ignore contracts. You may notice subtle distractions pulling harder than usual. Notifications that interrupt. Tasks that feel urgent but meaningless. Thoughts circling without resolution. These aren't coincidences, they're tests. Gentle, persistent, unavoidable tests of alignment. Guarding your attention isn't about fear. It's about listening to what truly resonates. About protecting the quiet space where intuition can speak clearly. About noticing where momentum builds and where it leaks. This is why microclarity matters. Why one conversation, one decision, one small commitment can ripple farther than expected. Why energy invested unconsciously often returns as confusion, while energy invested consciously returns as momentum. You may feel restless when your attention wavers, or frustrated when clarity collides with noise. That's not weakness. That's the portal reminding you of your power. This is amplification, not overwhelm. A mirror reflecting what you prioritize, what you resist, and what you carry forward. And right now, the stakes aren't dramatic. They're subtle, quiet, persistent, and they will follow you if you do not notice them. Because alignment isn't found in motion alone. It's found in where you place your focus and what you choose to let expand. Every thought matters. Every decision counts. And the portal is watching. This is the outcome of Uranus Direct in Taurus. Surprising, isn't it? Stability after so much internal turbulence. Not the kind of stability you expected. Not the one that arrives in neat packages, but the quiet kind that surfaces when suspended issues begin to resolve themselves on their own. You may notice relief in subtle ways. Conversations that once felt stuck finally flow. Emotions that lingered, unresolved, return for closure, but this time with clarity instead of confusion. Opportunities that seemed impossible appear when timing finally aligns. This is the universe giving you feedback in the form of synchronicities. Small signs, repeated patterns, coincidences that feel almost deliberate. They are not luck. They are guidance, confirming that your internal recalibration has been effective. You may feel a sense of rhythm returning. The chest softens. The mind clears. The future begins to feel less like a storm to survive and more like a wave to ride, without needing to control it. The lessons of the full moon, the two halves portal, and Uranus retrograde coalesce here. You've seen what no longer fits. You've recognized your sensitivities. You've made small, precise choices that carry weight. You've held focus when the world offered distractions. And now you feel the outcome, stabilization through change. It's not the end of transformation. It's the proof that change can be steady, trusted, and aligned. You may still face moments of resistance. Old patterns may appear briefly, but you know now how to navigate them without losing your center. Because the wave is here, it's moving forward, and you are ready not to control it but to ride it, fully aware, fully aligned, fully yourself. This moment, the convergence of the full moon, the two halves portal and Uranus Direct, was never about rushing or forcing. It was about recognition, awareness, alignment. You've felt the shift. You've seen what no longer fits. You've leaned into your sensitivity, honored your micro-decisions, guarded your focus, and allowed clarity to arrive. Now, you stand on the other side of the threshold, not as someone who controls the world, but as someone who moves with it. Someone who knows that timing matters, choices carry weight, and awareness is power. This is your invitation to notice the subtle signs, to honor the internal compass that has guided you here, to act with quiet courage in the small decisions that shape everything. And if this message reached you, it's because you're ready. Ready to trust yourself. Ready to trust the wave. Ready to recognize that every alignment, every shift, every portal has been leading to this very moment. So take a breath. Feel it. Hold this clarity close. And move forward. Not hurried, not anxious, not fearful, but fully awake, fully aware, and fully alive. If you felt the weight of this, if it resonated with the shifts inside you, share your experience below. Let this be a space where others like you, sensitive, attuned, quietly powerful, can connect, reflect, and witness the awakening together. You are not alone, and this is only the beginning.